Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, make sure you hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. We're getting into American versus European suburbs and why the US suburbs suck. Now, a few things off the rip. I had some friends that lived in the suburbs and I was in Chicago and stuff, and I would visit them. And I will say this, all the houses look the same. It looked like a weird cult society out there and stuff. Not really my vibe. Also, not a whole lot of resources in the area to kind of go to. A lot of the people in the suburbs have to drive to the city to get their resources for their home. Let's see what they address in this video. Very curious. You guys have any questions, comments, concerns? Let me know in the comments down below.
This is a typical American suburban street. It's wide, the houses are very far apart and look mostly the same.
Pretty much, you're right. Big old plots of land, very nicely cut grass, quiet.
There is barely anything on
Control C, Control V.
well manicured lawns, post boxes, a few trees or bushes, and the occasional fire hydrant.
Oh man.
Now compare this to a suburb in Leipzig, Germany.
Yo, Leipzig, Germany? That's insane. All the houses have individuality. The streets look very lush and stuff. There seems like a lot going on here.
Differences do you notice?
Oh my gosh. It's beautiful. I would hardly consider this a suburb, but it is. And the thing is, when I was in Mönchengladbach, that's the kind of vibe I got too.
First off, there is stuff around you. The streetscape is very diverse and mentally engaging.
Yes.
In comparison, the American suburb looks like a desolate urban wasteland.
It does look like not a desolate urban wasteland. Come on, man.
Also, in the European suburb, the street is narrow, there is a 30 km/h speed limit, and the buildings are close together. Do notice the tram tracks. In this suburb, you can live car-free. If you want to go to the center, you can either take the tram or ride your bike for 20 minutes on dedicated bike lanes.
That's actually pretty cool because riding a bike in America that's an anomaly, man. There are places you can do it, but it's not very common. You have to have a car to get anywhere.
Or take the S-Bahn because there's also a train station. In the American suburb, you have no option but to drive. Head out onto the busiest road, a horrifying mix of street and road, onto the jammed highway, and after an hour you'll be in the center, searching for a parking spot.
Not fun. Not fun.
How about going to a restaurant? In the European suburb, there are dozens of different, unique, local restaurants reachable on foot, by bike, or public transit.
Big corporations have killed that reality for suburbs, man. It's very unfortunate. You'll have a McDonald's and Arby's, a couple gas stations, and a mall with generic, huge corporate stores and whatnot. Generic stores, nothing that stands out. As far as mom and pop shops go, those are on the sharp decline in America. Each financial catastrophic worldwide event that's happened has put more and more mom and pop shops in bankruptcy and stuff, so they're not really a thing anymore. You will find a few depending on where you're at, but it's not common. It used to be, but unfortunately not in this day and age.
In the American suburb, you're an hour walk away from a chain restaurant next to a busy road. If you want to eat, you gotta get in your car.
Yeah, literally. Chain restaurants are so common in suburbs too, man. It's insane.
What if you have children? In this European suburb, there are 3 schools close by.
3 schools? There's one and it's not close by. It's like in a centralized location so kids from other suburbs can also go to the same school. That's crazy.
Kids can walk or bike there on their own and learn to be independent early on. In the American suburb, a child could get to school after 35 minutes of walking, mostly along a busy arterial road, also having to cross a 6-lane road.
And sending your child to school alone by themselves is like almost unheard of in America, man. There's all kinds of serial killers, kidnappers, and all kind of wild stuff out there in America. So people don't even chance it. Especially like if you see a kid walking by themselves and stuff, that's a primary target for a lot of people that don't mean well, you know?
And somehow, I mean, there's no crosswalk, so kids have to be driven to school every day by mommy and daddy.
Yep. Which is inconvenient if mom and dad have to both work, you know?
The same goes for sports. Over here, kids can take a 10-minute walk to the nearest sports field or a 3-minute bike ride on calm, safe streets on their own. You
know, the word safe is emphasized here. I want to really reiterate that it is far safer in Germany to do any of these activities than it is in America. And I've said this many, many times. You've heard it from a lot of other people as well, but that is the reality that we live in. It is not safe to do a lot of things in America, man. It is not safe. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of it has to do with the layout, the structures, and the placements of things. And the other large factor in why we don't have the same things as Europe is purely because of safety. Unfortunately, it's tragic. When I was in Germany myself, the one thing that I looked at and got to partake in was biking culture. It was so therapeutic, man. Getting from point A to point B on bike. I mean, it shortened my trips and stuff, and it was just genuinely fun. And I got to enjoy the weather. It was so cool, man.
The US, it's a 40-minute march through a maze of streets, partially along a major transit artery. Gotta get in the SUV and let mommy drive you to practice. This is where the term soccer mom originates from.
Literally.
People lament today's children for being overly dependent on their parents. But
that's why people in America are hyper dependent. They're codependent as hell. And then people in Europe are very like independent. They do their own thing. It's like we're raised like this for most of our lives, right? You know, mommy, daddy taking you from point A to point B because we can't do it ourselves. And then we expect to be bottle fed as adults. And then we realize that's not how the world works. And you have all these people struggling. You know what I mean? It's insane.
But in such neighborhoods, children don't have a choice but to be dependent. Otherwise, they cannot go anywhere. They are stuck at home. In contrast, in European suburbs, kids can be let out safely to move around on their own, to go to places they want to, without the need for the mommy and daddy taxi service.
Yo, this narrator going harder than the paint on America, man. But he is speaking facts. He's speaking facts, but dang.
You note that yellow residential building on the left. That is a mid-rise. European suburbs tend to be a mixture of those and single or multi-family homes, like on this street. Zoning in US suburbs only allows for single-family homes, and they are usually placed very far apart, leading to low density and long distances. This makes public transportation non-viable over here.
Yeah, unfortunately, I really wish that there was a way to cultivate public transportation all over America. Unfortunately, it only exists in big cities, and it's very reliable there. But then when you get into like suburbs and stuff like that, it's not a thing. That's what was a massive culture shock for me in Germany, that they had public transportation in suburbs. I was mind blown. I mean, there's no way the train goes in these rural areas. What? Unheard of.
Here in Europe, hundreds of people live within walking distance of this tram stop. In the US, if you put a tram stop here, you'd have a few dozen people living within walking distance. Meaning, even if you built public transit here, almost nobody would take it, because no matter how you build it, people would be too far away from it. If you're half an hour away on foot from the nearest tram stop, you'll take your car instead. And people do. So
yes, bro. People will take their car to go from one store in the same parking lot to another. Ask me how I know.
Giant highways had to be built, rammed right into the city, usually demolishing non-white neighborhoods in the process. The end result was mass motorization all across America, constant traffic jams, noise and pollution, but not for the suburbanites. It was the urban dwellers, particularly those who were poor, who had to live near high-traffic areas in cheap, low-quality housing. The suburbs also became a growth Ponzi scheme, where income from the suburbs couldn't cover future infrastructure overhauls, so the city had to expand and sell new properties constantly to get enough money to maintain what they already have. Not Just Bikes did a great video about this, link in the description.
Yeah, Not Just Bikes did do this. Suburbs are a scam. Literally, he packed up America to the T, man. Cooked us.
The suburbs and car-centric development were useful political tools in the 1950s to enforce a Christian conservative, white nationalist hierarchy within American society, where white men are on top, women are at home, fully dependent on their husbands, and where all resources are channeled towards the white middle and upper class in the form of billions in state subsidies. And the rest of society, poor people, non-whites, were left to fend for themselves in decaying urban centers, sucked dry financially by the parasitic suburbs around them. Car-centric planning became a weapon of choice for conservatives in order to maintain the unequal status quo. And this phenomenon isn't unique to America. In Europe, as our cities transition away from cars, the opponents of this change are almost always conservatives. While the incumbent Paris mayor campaigned on eliminating 50,000 parking spaces, her conservative opponent, who looks frankly diabolical,
He's like her conservative opponent who looks frankly diabolical. I mean, she do look like a supervillain, but damn.
Standards wanted to halt decongestion measures. In Prague, a city overrun by cars, conservatives keep screaming about the cyclo-fascists ruining the city after a shadow is painted somewhere. Meanwhile, conservative district mayors are busy turning sidewalks into parking lots. In Madrid, the conservative city leadership cancelled the ultra-low emission zones, leading to local protests to bring them back. In Budapest, we have Orbán's far-right conservatives screaming about how there is a witch hunt against drivers by the new center-left left mayor, and complaining how in inner city Budapest it's almost faster to walk now than to drive. Even in Germany, Bavarian conservatives are dumping money into highways while letting the rail network fall into disrepair.
Dude, the rail network is horrendous right now. There's strikes all the time. There's all these massive delays as a result, right? And then a lot of things are broken. The train will break down while you're on the train and you have to evacuate all the time. It used to be every once in a blue moon these incidents would pop up, but it's happened so often. You'll experience it at least 4 or 5 times in a 1 week period, at least when you're in Germany, dude. It's unfortunate. There's got to be something bigger going on if their railway system is this messed up, you know?
As a rule of thumb, in every city with decongestion measures, you'll also find conservatives screaming about the war on cars, the symbol of hierarchy in transportation, where the affluent suburban minority gets to occupy 80% of public space inside cities, compared to the more egalitarian space use of public transit and bicycles. God forbid you have to get out of your giant SUV of death and get on a tram with the peasants. Of course, upholding the conservative hierarchy isn't why suburbs are built today in the US. It's mostly just a necessary continuation of the Ponzi scheme that began with the first suburbs. Also, it's due to faulty zoning codes not allowing for mid-rise developments that would actually make more money for the city, increase density, and make public transit viable. In Europe, our suburbs are mixed, with both mid-rises, single and multi-family homes. They're an organic part of the city and contribute fairly to the local budget. There is also subsidized, affordable public transit. All in all, it's more egalitarian. And if the US situation sounds depressing in contrast, as an American, there are things you can do to potentially help change things. If there is a local transit riders union, go join it. Look if there are any initiatives on the ballot for traffic calming, bike lanes, etc. Show up to your local town hall meetings and advocate for zoning reform.
Do you know what won't happen? All of this. It's too much work for people. It's not convenient enough. So yes, this is what has to happen in order to advocate for change and stuff and see a massive change. But the reality is, especially with the new generation, that's not going to happen. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below.